Okay, so I just wanted to tell a little story about my. Just wanted to tell a little story about. Just relate my story about trying to get to Baja last night. So I leave my house and I go to the. I'm going to the ferry here in Guaymas to go to Santa Rosalia so I can do this sailing trip. And so I get there, on time, and I buy my ticket for 800 pesos, and I'm talking to the people and whatnot, and having a decent time. And the boat finally leaves about an hour late, about 9 p.m. last night. And then after about an hour, 10, 15 miles out, the boat swings a U-turn and starts heading back in. And we're all like, what the hell's going on? And so they decided the conditions were too rough to continue. And so we headed back to Guaymas. And I'm like, okay, well, you don't want to second guess the captain or whatever, even though the winds were mellow and the conditions were light, in my opinion. And I guess you know what they say about opinions, but I've been out on the water here quite a bit. So we returned back to port, got in about 11:30, 12 o'clock. Finally, we're able to get off the boat. And I said, I'm going back home, man. I live here in Guaymas, and I want my money back. And they're like, hey, no money back. No, we don't give any money back. And, you got to come back tomorrow at 8 o'clock. We're going to leave then. And I'm like, what? And so they're saying, yeah, we're going to leave at 8 o'clock tomorrow. And I'm like, well, what's going to be different with the conditions tomorrow at 8 o'clock? And they just walk away. They don't know. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to go home, and I'm going to come back at 8 o'clock and try to get my money back. And so when I get home finally, my taxi buddy brings me home, and I get home, get back online. First thing I do is check all the weather things that I check: Weather Buoy, Wind Guru, NOAA site, and National Hurricane Center, and I check out the conditions on what's going on here. And then I check out for the forecast. And so the forecast for today and this morning is worse than it was the conditions last night. So I'm like, they're not going to go. If they made this call last night, they're not going to go today. And but I got to go get my money. But then I look on the internet on the website for the ferries, and they're not supposed to be open today. They're not supposed to have any trips going out, crossings today, not till Tuesday. So their office is supposed to be closed on Sunday and Monday. So I'm like, shit. And so I go back down this morning. I get up. I go to bed finally at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, and get up this morning at 6, catch the first bus back to Guaymas to collect my money, but I also have my equipment in hand. And so I go back to the boat, and there's nobody really there of any authority, and they're like, yeah, the wind's too much now, and we're gonna leave at 1 o'clock. And I'm like, no way. I want my money back. And they say, well, the guy Diego is coming. He's an agent for the OPN, the company that runs the ferries. And so I'm waiting and waiting for him to come. I want my money back because I want to make another plan. And so finally he comes, and he speaks good English. And the first thing he says to me, he goes, no, we don't refund any money. First thing. And I'm like, huh. And so I'm speaking to him in English. I said, well, I went home last night and I read the terms and conditions of our agreement, and it says that you do refund money. And that you're also responsible for paying for my transportation to and from my home to the ferry station. And he's like, no, we're not, hang on, let me go. And he's like making excuses so he can go to the boat. He's got a job to do. He's got all these people, and he's trying to get them breakfast because all the other passengers, they just slept in the chairs on the boat all night. And they wouldn't even let people, if they wanted to, take their vehicles off because the vehicles are already packed in the boat. Essentially, these people were sequestered, which means in Spanish, kidnapped. And but I got off the boat, went home. and everybody else just slept in their chairs. And this little ferry is so bogus. It's not very comfortable at all and has virtually no facility to it. But so they just slept in their chairs, and then they're going to hang out another 5 or 6 hours. So the ferry's responsible for giving them a room, providing transportation to and from the ferry station to a room, and supplying them with food and beverage every 6 hours, man. And so I read the terms and conditions. But you know, people don't stand up for what they have in their contract here. People are like little, you know, they're like, okay, está bien. And I'm not that way. And I'm not going to let him push me around. So Diego, he finally arrives this morning, and the first thing he says is, you're not going to get a refund. We don't refund any money. So instantly we're having a conflict. So we go back to the boat, and they're saying, we're going to leave. And Diego's car is on the boat, and I won't let him back off. I stand there in front of his car, and I won't let him leave. And he tries to run me over. And I'm standing there with my bag on the right where the ferry takes off from, right at the dock. And I won't let him leave his car, and he's driving into me, and he's pushing me back, and I'm against his trunk. And finally I slap the hood, and I call him a pendejo, which means asshole in Spanish. And he gets out of the car. Meanwhile, all the security is gathering. He calls for security, and we all know that Mexico is a banana republic, and the military are the police. So who comes? A Hummer full of guys with machine guns. But most of these guys, I think, I was talking to last night, talking about babes and drinking and partying, and I'm hanging out with the boys last night. But regardless, you know, 10 guys with machine guns show up to, you know, move me away. But so I move away, and he backs his car off, and he says, look, you got to come on Tuesday to get your refund. We'll refund your money on Tuesday. And I'm like, no, man, I need the money now. I wanted the money last night. I'm making another plan. You guys didn't live up to your contract, and I want my money. And he's like, we don't have it. You have to come back on Tuesday. And I explained to him, I'm not going to be here on Tuesday. I need the money today. So he's still calling. The security's all around. Now the people on the boat are pissed off because they're saying, we're going to leave right now anyways. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. You're going to leave now when the conditions are worse than last night, and they're going to be worse later on today, but you're going to leave now anyway? Now what I'm going to do is tell you, now that this is a safety issue, now that you're not going to give me my money, and you're going to leave in worse conditions, I think what we need to do is make a report to the Secretary of Communications and Transportation, which is a federal agency, and I think we need to make a report to Profeco, which is the Consumer Protection Agency here in Mexico, and that we need to report to API, which runs all the ports in Mexico, and we need to report to the port captain that there's something wrong going on here. And so now the guy changes his tune, Diego, saying, well, if you come back Tuesday, you can get your money. I'm like, no. And he's like, look, let me get this boat out. Just please get off and let them leave, and I'll see about getting your money. Okay. So I hesitantly get off, and the boat heads out into the wind. And all the people are on the deck looking at me like the crazy gringo. But, you know, whatever, I don't care. And, but I set a good example about how to get your money when people tell you about just shutting up and getting back in line. And so finally, Diego says to me, he goes, look, man, I'm going to use Article 30 of the federal law against you because you disrespected me. And that's a falta de respeto. And what I'm going to do is have you arrested, and then I'm going to have you deported, is exactly what he told me in English. And I'm like, what? You're threatening me for falta de respeto, and you're going to have me deported because I'm asking for my refund? That's what you're going to do? And now that I'm going to report you to the Secretary of Communications and the Consumer Protection Bureau and to the port captain and to the port authorities, now you're going to use a law to have me arrested for not respecting you because I called you an asshole. Okay. Seems kind of funny to me. But, you know, now I'm mad. And I'm like, okay, well, then I'm just going to file a report. You do whatever you think is right. Okay? And so I made sure I wasn't in their way. And so he's like, okay, if you come on over, I'll get you your money. And so he goes over and he opens up the ticket office, sees my name in there, takes my ticket, and refunds every goddamn penny. And I told him thank you and left it at that. And I appreciated his being able to do that and get it done. And I reminded him, however, that the first words that came across his lips were, "We don't make any refunds." And so I read all of the terms and conditions in Spanish and English on their website, and they do. And he didn't like me threatening to report him to all those authorities, so he threatened me with deportation because I didn't respect some, you know, goon agent for some stupid ass company. Well, that's my story, and I'm going to take the ferry tonight and from Los Mochis and get to La Paz tomorrow morning. I'll be back.